Hi, my name is Taylor Paris, and for our literary publication class, I'm going to be reviewing Crab Fat magazine. Just a disclaimer before I start, Crab Fat is actually switching website platforms, and so I was unable to access their website to view their current issues and current works that they have published. But luckily I was able to go through their Twitter and find some of their newer editions, as well as some of the authors that they have published. To start, I just want to go over some of the basics of Crab Fat magazine. I pulled a quote from their Twitter account that says, "Crab Fat publishes experimental, traditional, queer, feminist, punk, literary, and avant-garde prose and poetry." I just wanted to pull that so that way you were able to get a grasp of what exactly they were looking for in their own words. In genres published, we have that they publish poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction, and they have an emphasis in feminist, minority, and LGBTQ+ literature. They actively seek LGBTQ+ women and minority voices in order to publish. It is a literary magazine that looks to be publishing voices that are not normally heard, so voices that aren't just straight white people. Their formatting that they publish in is web, e-publication, and print. Most of the issues do appear online, and you can find them on their website, but there's an annual best of print anthology, and it's the editor's favorite 25 pieces from the previous year. So every year, at the end of the year, they release that. And they release 12 issues a year. One is released every single month, except for, like I said, the annual best of anthology. On the bottom here, I've put some covers from previous issues. We have the 2018 Atheist issue, which was an annual issue that they released in 2018, which features poetry and prose from atheist writers about their experience with religion, or lack thereof, I guess. So, when talking about genre, whenever it comes to Crab Fat, they have put in multiple places that they view genre as arbitrary, and they do not want their writers to feel like they are trapped in by a certain genre, or that they cannot bounce back and forth between genres, or that one piece that's submitted has to fall under only one genre and not multiple. So they don't really have listed exactly what genres they accept. Like I said, as long as it's by an LGBTQ minority or female voice, then that's kind of what they're looking for. They also have an appreciation for visual art and actively seek visual art, which I find very interesting because not a lot of literary magazines do this. Usually they just kind of focus on the literature that they want to put in the magazine. So I included some more of their covers just so you can see, kind of get like a feel of the kind of visual art they're looking for. As you can see, the two covers are very different, and I'm going to kind of get into why that might be a little bit later. Next, I'm going to get into some of the most basic themes that I've been seeing throughout Crab Fat. The first one that I'm going to talk about is growth and repair. I felt that the best example of this was actually the April 2019 cover. As you can see, it's an image of something that looks like part human, part cyborg, and that it seemed like they're trying to repair themselves, but now like they've lost pieces of themselves in the process. I feel like that is an important aspect of Crab Fat, of sharing stories of people who are trying to repair themselves, or have gone through something that makes them feel damaged. They seek a lot of LGBTQ minority voices, and a lot of their stories involve things like this. And another poem that doesn't necessarily involve LGBT or minority voice is a poem by a woman named Anne, I believe. The poem is titled Session 21, I Tell the Psychologist About Baba Yaga. This poem is a focus on her psychology, her visit to the psychologist, and is a lot about her learning how to repair herself and grow from trauma. Another theme that I've been mentioning throughout this presentation is minority voices. Crab Fat focuses a lot on voices of people who are not necessarily heard. A good example is God is the Lottery, which is about someone's experience in poverty, in like deep poverty. And what I think is really interesting about Crab Fat is that they do not have a submission price, like it doesn't cost to submit. And the reason that they do this is so that anyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, can submit and have their voices heard. And so I think God is the Lottery is a really good example of that because it's a minority voice. It's about a person of color in poverty. And it's just a really good example of how they actively seek out minority voices. Another example is I Want for Elliot of Wholeness, which is about someone's experience with religion. And it's a member of the LGBTQ community and also an atheist, which are two very active minorities in the United States. And then I also wanted to focus on the creators of Crab Fat, who are both themselves identify as non-binary and use they, them pronouns. And so you can see just by the people that are running the magazine that it is important to them that they seek out minority voices because they are part of a minority. The next kind of theme that I'm going to talk about that Crab Fat looks for is hybrid literature. A lot of the poems and prose that they publish is in very interesting formatting and kind of like cross formatting. So one example I have is the poem, the image of the poem that I have there. I wasn't able to find the title of it because, like I said, their website's down, so I was just kind of going on their Twitter, and this was something that I found on their Twitter. Bound is also something that I found on their Twitter, which I could not get a picture of, but it's kind of scattered in the same way that the image there is. And I think it's really interesting that they look for literature that has a very cool visual element. I think that says a lot about the content that they want to produce and how they want their audience to view them. They want to see that they're looking for people who are creative and who can mess around with format and understand how to make literature interesting both content-wise and visually. The last theme that I'm going to talk about is change, and for this one I kind of want to focus on the magazine covers because I feel like the visual element is kind of the most important part of this aspect. And so the reason that I think that change is important to Crab Fat magazine is because they don't stick to one way that they would like to look visually. A lot of magazines have kind of like they pick an aesthetic and they try to like stick with it, but Crab Fat is completely different. Every magazine cover looks entirely different, and like you wouldn't even know that it's like the same literary magazine if you didn't see the title on it. And so that shows me that they like the idea of change, because if they don't have their visual cover stay the same, then why would they want their content to stay the same? And so that tells me that they look for things that are going to be different every single time, and they never want to recreate the same magazine or same literary journal twice, which I think is really cool and really interesting that they don't stick with one thing, because it really gives them a lot of opportunities to do whatever they want in the future. So the last important thing that I want to talk about in regards to Crab Fat is actually its sister magazine, Damaged Goods. The creators found that they were receiving so many amazing submissions from queer and trans authors, and they felt like they wanted to give them their own individual platform to share their own individual experiences that don't necessarily align with other minorities and women. So they created a second magazine called Damaged Goods. Like I said, it's the same creators, but it's specifically for queer and trans authors. So some of the basics for Damaged Goods, they publish the same genres as Crab Fat, so poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction, but as I said before, they're looking for an emphasis in literature by queer and trans authors. Their formats are also web, e-publication, and print, but they look to print chapbooks and full lengths, and so their chapbooks are usually about 20 to 40 pages of poetry, micro-memoir, or lyric essay by a single author, or full lengths, which are 60 to 120 pages, also by one author. But then every year they release an annual poetry anthology, which is comprised of chapbooks, so that 20 to 40 pages of poetry by a bunch of different authors. I think probably about up to 10 to 12. So the annual anthology that I mentioned in the previous slide, this is the annual anthology for 2019. It's called The Impossible Beast, Poems of Queer Eroticism. So you can kind of get a taste of what that whole magazine is about. This first poem that I have here, Trans, is by Caden McNam. This was featured in their own chapbook within The Impossible Beast, and then this untitled poem is by Kaja Ray Lucas, who was also given their own chapbook within The Impossible Beast. Alright, so that is what I have to say about Crab Fat Magazine. Sorry there wasn't much more content-wise in regards to the poems that are included in their magazine. Like I said, their website is down, so it was kind of hard to find it the best that I could. But just like as a review, just wanted to show you that Crab Fat has a lot of focus on diversity, on queer and trans voices, on women's stories, on minority stories, which is really important in this day and age because those stories need to be heard. Crab Fat also has a focus on the visual art, which is extremely important when tying in all of these stories. The visual elements can almost tell you more than the literary content that they have. And finally, these are their links where you can find them on their websites and Twitter. I included both Crab Fat and Damaged Goods. They're all accepting submissions 24/7, and they usually get back to you between like 4 to 6 weeks, I think they said on their website. Right now, their website is down, so they aren't taking submissions, but once it comes back up, they'll be able to take their submissions through their website. Damaged Good Press also, I believe, accepts submissions year-round, but not entirely sure on that. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.